What are the personal qualities that you think best define leadership at the executive level?
Someone who can take himself or herself not that seriously. The most important thing is to be able to take people on a journey with them. I think its attitude is the most important thing. I've always had that feeling that when I hire people, I hire for attitude and train for skill.
That's right, and to some extent I think it's a matter of faking it until you make it.
Yeah.
Not all of us are naturally inspiring or charismatic. Many leaders aren't and don't need to be.
What I know about myself is I wear my heart on my sleeve. I find it very hard not to be emotional about things. I am most optimistic about the Australian mining industry. I think we innovate. I think we will work out a way to use AI appropriately.
Ivy and Gecko acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future.
Our guest today is Tommy McKeith, a seasoned mining executive with more than 30 years' experience spanning geology, exploration, business development and leadership. He's the former EVP of Growth and International Projects at Goldfields, and today sits on the boards of Evolution Mining, Ordell Minerals and Thungela Resources, while also serving as the non-executive chairman of Ordell Minerals. We hope you enjoy.
Tommy McKeith, welcome to Hearts and Minds.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Talking about celebrities, back-to-back South Africans. I had Ian Murray in here an hour ago.
Oh, wow. Back to my manganese days. Yeah.
Listen, knowing that you're trained as a geologist and back in your executive days at Goldfields you were responsible for global exploration and project development, I thought I'd use my ChatGPT skills and plug in what makes an ideal explorationist. And it came up with these terms: curiosity, resilience, critical thinking, persistence and optimism. Do those qualities sum you up?
I would say optimism, clearly, persistence, pretty much. I'd say all of them, yes. I think it's ChatGPT is not a bad
it's surprisingly
judge of character. Yeah.
Do you use it much on a day-to-day basis?
I use the Google one. I find it very useful.
Yeah.
I ask it quite a lot of geological questions, and it gets me going in the right direction at least.
Yeah. I find it excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly not a technocrat, and I'm a late adopter, I suppose, of AI. But I was listening to a podcast the other day, and OpenAI that released ChatGPT only November 22, so about 3 years ago. It now has 1 billion active users. So with a global population of 8.1 billion, we're talking about 12 or 13% of humanity is a regular user of ChatGPT. And when you think about, most of the world's population doesn't have access to the technology to use it anyway, it's a remarkable growth in a short space of time.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You just do wonder where it's going to end up.
Well, I think it's it's something that we certainly in the mining industry, I think we're fairly slow to adopt.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that we need to, I think, work a lot harder at understanding how it can impact our business.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Let's start with your backstory, Tommy. What can you tell us about your early years? Where did you grow up? What was it like living there at the time?
Yeah. Well, as you said, I'm South African. I was born in Johannesburg. I'm just over 60, so in the early 60s. It was a fantastic place to be as a white person, I guess. To be fair, it was still an apartheid time in South Africa. So my upbringing was like any other suburban upbringing. Rode my bike in the road and played with my friends and all that kind of stuff. So fantastic upbringing. Went to a public school and then ended up going. I wanted to be a tennis player, actually. So that's sort of all I did while I was at school. I never studied too hard. Ended up getting a half bursary to a university in the States, and my parents couldn't afford the other half, so I had to make a very quick decision about what to do next and go to the army, because there was military conscription in those days, or go to university. So I decided to go to university and didn't know what I was going to study because I was going to be a tennis player. So I like geography, so I went into geology without knowing anything about it, and managed to get a scholarship with one of the companies there, a company called Gencor in those days, which is a predecessor to Billiton, and then BHP Billiton. So that's how it all started for me down that.
I asked Ian Murray the same question. Apartheid. What impact did it have on your life as a teenager? Growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Well, I got to say, from my perspective, I recall some quite bad injustices, and my parents were both very anti-apartheid. My dad was from Scotland and my mother from the Netherlands, so they weren't multi-generational South Africans. But that said, what it did show me was how I just lived life without even knowing about it, and it upsets me today to think about it back then. If I'd known more and cared more, I could have maybe done more at the time, and I didn't. And it is quite an interesting reflection, and it's something that I think as South Africans, we find, of our generation, a lot of us aren't actually proud of being South African, which is kind of quite sad, really.
It's interesting. Ian said he only became aware of Nelson Mandela, when he was in his late teens or early 20s. He almost gave the impression that he was quarantined from the effects of apartheid.
Well, I suppose that's what it was, but I think we just didn't look hard enough. If your life was happy and you just sort of carried on. But I agree. I mean, I think there was very sort of controlled media and stuff like that in our days, and even what we learnt in history at school and stuff like that was all very well controlled. Yeah.
So you had a big interest in tennis. By the sound of it, probably less of an interest in the academic side of schooling. Was there an event or a realisation as a teenager or in your early 20s when you finally worked out what you wanted to do with the rest of your life?
Well, not really, except that sort of by design, I had to go to university. I had to study something. So I studied geology without really knowing what that meant. I'm totally, I'm very at peace with that, and I'm very happy it happened because it's given me a fantastic career, opportunities to travel around the world to places that I don't think a lot of people would never go to in their lives. So those opportunities have been fantastic for me. So I'd say I fell into it. I didn't make a conscious decision, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Will you share something about us that not many people know aside from your family?
I wish I could share something. I can't think of anything.
Probably the tennis playing is
probably
something that most people do.
Yeah, well, that's probably true because I really haven't played tennis since those days. I don't, and that's something that makes me a little annoyed about myself, is that I didn't really play it with my children a lot, and both of them actually play very good tennis.
Yeah, yeah.
and I never sort of pushed them in that direction, yeah.
Has there been a great South African tennis player? I'm trying to think.
Well, probably in the days that I was there, Johan Kriek, I don't know if that name rings a bell.
Vaguely.
He was probably one of the most. And then there was a doubles pairing, Bob Hewitt and Macmillan, I think, was his partner.
Those,
they won, I think, Wimbledon once or twice and that kind of stuff, yeah.
You're one of the busiest board directors I know. You sit on 4 boards currently, and I understand soon to be 5. So you probably don't have a lot of time to relax. But when you do, how do you relax?
Well, I like cycling. I cycle every morning, and I do Pilates in the afternoon, so I like to keep physically active. I do a bit of reading, both non-fiction and fiction. I enjoy reading fiction as well. And more recently, and maybe this is something people don't know about me, I've decided to study to be a game ranger. Yeah, because I have a very big passion for wildlife and nature, and I'm doing a field guides course in South Africa at the moment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you spend much time in South Africa?
I do, yes. I'm on the board of a South African company that takes me across there, 3 or 4 times a year. And then I've sort of linked this the training with those board meetings, basically, yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. You've been around a lot of CEOs, obviously being on boards. What are the personal qualities that you think best define leadership at the executive level?
Well, I think someone who can take himself or herself not that seriously. I think that's one of the first things that I see as a successful CEO. And I think the most important thing is to be able to take people on a journey with them, to show their what the vision that they're trying to drive towards, the passion that they have for it. To me, those are the sort of overriding characteristics of a really good CEO.
So important, isn't it, to be able to articulate and get people excited about a vision and hopefully an end goal that is more than profit. It's an end goal that's rooted in community benefit or community service. Increasingly, I find with candidates, young and old, a need to make a difference in the world through meaningful work that they do, beyond a salary or a corporate profit. And I think you alluded to it, humility and a sense of humour. And with that, I think vulnerability, being able to declare to people and reveal to people that you don't have all the answers to all the problems. And I think that encourages trust-based relationships, because you need the people around you to, collectively solve many of the problems.
Yep, yeah, that's right.
Guests on this podcast, Tommy, have often said that it's important for leaders to be authentic. That seems to be a word of the decade. But what if your authentic self is not particularly attractive or inspiring to others?
Yeah, well, look, I guess that can happen if in some people's cases. I think its attitude is the most important thing. I've always had that feeling that when I hire people, I hire for attitude and train for skill. And so even if your authentic self is a bit of a grumpy person, as long as your attitude is positive towards the work you're doing and towards the vision you're trying to move towards, I think to me that's the enthusiasm is the most important aspect that I look for in leaders, is that enthusiasm to drive to the result. And if you're a bit short in doing that, or you're a bit cutthroat or whatever, you can get around that as long as you're enthusiastic about the goal. Yeah,
that's right. And to some extent, I think it's a matter of faking it until you make it.
Yeah.
Not all of us are naturally inspiring or charismatic. Many leaders aren't and don't need to be. They're credible, and they are to some extent able to role play to cover up their personality deficiencies sufficiently to be regarded and well respected by people.
I think a lot of the big tech sort of companies are led by people that I think started off as I don't want to call them nerds, but you sort of have that kind of background and sort of weren't very socially acceptable, and they've made it all in some huge companies and led a lot of people in those pursuits.
Yeah, indeed. Tell us about some of the key challenges of your recent roles. What have you learned about yourself and your leadership impact?
Well, what I know about myself is I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I find it very hard not to be emotional about things. Whether someone's being a bit hard on something that I've said or whatever it is, I can very quickly put my wall up. And what I've learned over time is to deal with that and to take a step back and take my heart off my sleeve a little bit and sort of harden up a little bit and then come back. So I'd say that's something that I've really learned over time. Instead of being too impulsive and too open with your thoughts and your emotions, I sort of hold back just a little bit, think about it first, and then move forward. Yeah.
So you've developed emotional intelligence over time. Yeah, I guess your level of self-awareness and ability to read the room and read other people has.
I believe,
enhanced.
I'd say that's probably a better way of explaining it. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you're on 4 boards at the moment. What are the main risks and rewards of being an independent director on an ASX board?
I suppose risks are mainly legal and reputational, and I think for me reputational is probably the biggest risk. I believe that's all we really have as a person is your reputation, and if that somehow got tarnished, it wouldn't be good. The rewards are amazing. I mean, you get to work with different people in different companies and different sort of commodities. In my case, I'm doing very different things. So the breadth of people that you interact with and industries that you interact with is open, and that's the reward.
Mm-hmm. Do you have much sort of self-teaching and coaching to do when you go on a board of a different commodity that you haven't been associated with?
Without a doubt. I mean, certainly technically, yes. Like I was on a lithium board, and that was a fantastic learning experience for me because I really delved very deep into the whole technical side of it. I think the people side is the same, and that's what I've always found very interesting in my career, where I've traveled sort of into the remotest areas of Russia and China and South America. Mining people everywhere around the world are all the same. I find they're all doing the same thing. They're normally good people. They're normally trying very hard. I guess we've all got a common sort of issue is with the earth, if you know what I mean. That's our challenge is pulling the rock out of the earth. So, I've found the people issues are quite interestingly not as challenging sometimes in mining because of that overriding characteristic of people that are in mining. If you should ask ChatGPT what that characteristic is.
Yeah. Let's talk about chairmanship. Being a chairman is different from being a non-executive independent director on the board. There is sort of more collaboration work that needs to be done to encourage these different team members, all of whom are intelligent. They've got strong opinions probably on a range of issues. How do you, as a chairman, get this dynamic working effectively?
Well, I think the thing that I've found the most as a chairman of a board is to make sure that you hear everybody's voices, because there's always a person at the board table who's the cleverest and the most outspoken and the person that gets heard the most, and everyone else sort of sits back. But it's often the person that's not saying so much that has a very important thing to say. So I've always tried to make sure that we can bring everybody's voice to the table. That you give everyone a fair amount of time and option to talk. I think that's one of the first things as a chairman that's necessary. And the other thing a chairman has to do sometimes is a few uncomfortable conversations. We go through these board reviews and sometimes the board reviews do highlight certain issues that need to be dealt with, and you need to have those kind of conversations. And so I'd say those would be the two prime. In the companies that I'm involved with, they're too small, I don't have to sort of stand up as a public chairman, if you know.
Yeah. As a chairman, do you give your non-executive directors direct access to the C-suite executives, or do you encourage the CEO to communicate directly with you and then you disseminate to the board?
No, very much the former. I think it's really critical that C-suite executives get to meet the board, and I think even beneath that, to be honest. I was very, as an executive, when I was presenting to the board, I always made sure I brought some of my team to be part of the presentation, because I think, number one, it's important for a board to see the depth in the organisation and the talent that's there. Number two, it's important for the executives to kind of learn how to communicate at that board level. I'm very strong on that. I think it's important that a deeper cross section as is feasible should be brought in front of the board. Yeah.
One of the most important things a chairman has to do, of course, is recruit a new CEO from time to time. What are the all-important questions that you think a board director should be asking of a CEO to work out, how suitable they might be to join a board at a particular time in the company's journey?
Well, I normally like to ask the question, where do they want to take, if they were the CEO of this company, where do they want to take it? And that I think gives me a lot of understanding, because number one, you can see if they've done enough homework on the company and they've actually got an understanding of the company that they're interviewing for. Number two, it sort of gives you an indication of their ability to sell their vision, and that they either develop it or even if they are still developing it, that they can tell you about that. And then, it also tells you, I think it gives you a lot of other little hints and tweaks as they go along. So I normally try to make that one of my sort of central questions to work around. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And without naming names, have you been on a board that you've regarded as dysfunctional, in the sense that the relationships between the directors are far less than ideal? And if you have, what needed to happen for that board to become more effective and more functional?
Well, I wouldn't say I wasn't on a board that was dysfunctional, but I did have an experience. I was the chairman of a board that had a disagreement of a very major move in the company. And typically most of the boards I've worked on, decisions eventually become a unanimous decision. You very rarely have to put a vote down on the table and say, I'm voting for this and you're voting for that, and count the votes. But this situation, we got to that where there were votes getting counted, and it took a lot of time and a lot of discussion and a lot of negotiation. Is how I put it. It was always very respectful and always very sort of cordial as that, but very very different points of view by sort of half the board and the other half of the board. The interesting thing there was I had a 5-person board. I was the chairman. Myself and the MD wanted to go one direction, and 2 non-execs wanted to go the other, and the third non-exec was sitting there on the fence. So the third non-exec essentially had the casting vote. So as a chairman, even though it said the casting vote, in this case it was null and void. So it has taught me that it's probably better to have even-numbered boards.
It's often said that the chairman is the first among equals.
Yes.
Does that hold true, or I guess there's an instance?
Well, there's an example. So it doesn't always, and I think being in my personal case, I've always tried to be humble and listen to everyone about every thing. So I try not, even if I am the chairman, I don't sort of sit at the head of the table and have my tea brought to me. I try not to be like that. So I'd say there is very little difference at times, except the stuff that you have to do behind the scenes. And often I find that's where the chairman's job is really the most important, is those individual phone calls with individual directors and sort of dealing with them on a personal note.
And now we take a short break to acknowledge our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Halo Civil Engineering. Halo is a multidiscipline civil contractor that specialises in the delivery of complex civil projects across defence, infrastructure, energy and resources. A West Australian company committed to delivering dynamic solutions with a focus on zero harm, while having a positive impact on their industry, clients and the people they serve. For more information, search for Halo Civil Engineering on socials or visit halocivil.com.
Is your business ready to amplify its voice? At Podwave Studios, we offer professional video podcast production services that help you connect with clients, build your brand, and grow your audience. From corporate messaging to thought leadership, we've got you covered. Book your session at podwavestudios.au today.
As the only executive search and leadership consulting firm to be admitted membership of the Minerals Council of Australia, Ivy & Gecko is uniquely resourced to advocate for the interests of our exploration, project development and mining clients.
In terms of engagement, Tommy, you'd know very well that if you've got a group of engaged people, they tend to apply discretionary effort. They go the extra yard beyond the minimum required. And with that, usually all the important business metrics head in the right direction. Safety, staff turnover reduces, innovation, productivity, profitability, ultimately. So as an executive leader, how best to strengthen the engagement of staff?
Well, in my case, where I had when I was running the exploration group, say for Goldfields, I had a very strong team around me, and what I found the best way to get engagement with them was to actually give them support. So let them, very rarely did I need to sort of challenge them in any direction. I was their chief supporter, and I basically rode shotgun, kept the corporate sort of bureaucracy away from them and let them do their work. And I found that the engagement I got out of that, certainly when we did all those engagement, sort of measures and had consultants come in and do surveys, my group was by far the most engaged. And I think it was because of that I cleared away the obstructions for them to do their work. They were good at it, and I let them know they were good at it, and they felt good at it and they felt empowered.
You raise a very good point, demonstrating that you are genuinely interested in the welfare of people and showing that you care for them is so critically important for any leader. I think that if you can win the hearts and minds of people by supporting them, as you've described, it just goes such a long way for morale and for engagement of any team. What are some of the indicators of a strong and healthy culture in a business, and to what extent, Tommy, is the board responsible for achieving such an outcome?
Well, I think the board's, starting with that, you've got to live that value from the board down. So at the board level, how the board interacts with themselves, I think sets the tone for the whole company. And so I think the board does have a very important role. I mean, whether it's describing what the values of the company are, and et cetera, I don't think it's more that they actually live it and they demonstrate it. How do you see? I think you described it a bit earlier. I mean, if the culture of a company is good, people like showing up for work. They work safely. They work harder. They're more productive. So I think it comes through in all the normal business metrics immediately. But Evolution, one of the companies I work on the board of, has a great sort of mantra. They say that they want your time at Evolution to be the most important in your career. And a lot of people I've personally spoken to that have sort of come and gone out of Evolution, they will say that very honestly that it was the best time of their career. And I think Evolution's got a great way of empowering people, and I think empowerment is very important. As a leader, you've got to show people where to go, and you've got to empower them to help you get there.
It's interesting you mentioned Evolution. We did a piece of research a couple of years ago now, which was published in our book Smart Value, and we surveyed a lot of different people, both at the board level and the executive level. And we obtained access to well over 350 executive level candidates. And one of the questions we asked them was to rank order their employers of choice, bearing in mind this was, we were concerned with mid-tier ASX mining companies, predominantly gold and base metals companies. And number one company, according to our survey, was Evolution Mining.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah.
And we dug deep, and I remember interviewing at the time Jake, who at that time was executive chairman, and Laurie and Paul Eagle, the head of HR there, to try and better understand what made that company tick. Why was the reputation and the culture of that company so effective in attracting the highest quality candidates to join and to keep them? And And one of the things we discovered when we spoke at length with Jake was that we found him to be what we termed a clock builder rather than a time teller. In other words, he was so concerned that his legacy as executive chairman of that company would be very, very long term. So he wasn't concerned about his tenure as CEO and executive chairman. He was interested about the next generation of leadership within Evolution Mining. So he built a clock that told everybody the story of the business, defined the values-based culture of the business, and set the tone for future leaders, Laurie Conway and beyond Laurie, to take over, as opposed to simply, being there and then disappearing and the company sort of ceasing to be on the radar to the same level. So it was an interesting case study, Evolution Mining. But what a great success story, and Jake's, to some extent trying to replicate it, isn't he, with his new business, Endura Mining, in New Zealand.
So I mean, I think that's an interesting comment that I've always felt. I think culture is something that lasts a lot, especially a good culture and even a bad culture. It lasts a lot longer than the people that set it. I saw that, for example, when I first arrived here in Australia for Goldfields. I set up the office here and I initiated the acquisition of St. Ives and Agnew from WMC back in those days. And I remember thinking at the time that, and sort of counselling Goldfields that we really shouldn't be bringing the big Goldfields machine here. We should let them run this, which they did. But what was interesting was the WMC culture at St. Ives and Agnew has actually now pervaded into Goldfields, and I think it was a very strong culture and a very good, technically backed culture that I think was, very good for the mining operation. And what I saw was interesting. I sort of liken it as a big ocean liner. Once it's going on a direction, it's quite hard to change it. So getting a bad starting off in a bad culture is really problematic.
When we look at industry opportunities and challenges, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that the Australian mining industry is facing?
Well, I think I sort of see two biggest challenges. One is people and talent. To talk to your specific interests. It's a travesty that the numbers are dropping at universities for geologists and mining engineers, metallurgists, etc. And we really need to make our industry more interesting to the young people that they want to be part of it. I don't know how we do that 100%. I think some of it is we've got to provide some purpose-led vision, which, as you said earlier, younger people are looking for more than just a job. They want to know they're making a difference, and we've got to maybe start describing what mining, the difference that mining does make to people. And I think you see adverts on television from some of the major miners trying to do that now, which is good. And the other thing that I think is here in Australia is a burning platform is our ability to replenish our reserves. We've got a fantastic endowment in this country, and I think there's still a lot more to be discovered. But it's just becoming harder and harder to go and do that exploration, with the market the way it is, and the market sort of being very cyclical and the funding being very fickle. And then also the legislation around getting access to ground. Just to get some exploration going here in WA, you've got to jump through a lot of hoops. And as a small company with, $3 million in your bank account, you can't afford a year of getting your permitting sorted out so that you can go and do a soil sampling program. So we do need to find a way through that if we want to be competitive and successful.
Australia's got a great reputation and has for a very long time as expert miners. We're less acclaimed for our manufacturing or downstream processing. Do you think we will ever, given the challenges we've got in terms of labour costs and energy costs, do you think we will ever become highly reputable as a downstream processor of products like lithium or rare earths?
No, not if our sort of government doesn't look long term. The mining industry is long term. We have to think, from a discovery to first mining is anywhere from 7 to 15 years, and that's if the permitting environment is permissive. Governments, I think, unfortunately, change fairly regularly, and they basically have different agendas. I would like to see a scenario where we had an energy think tank in this country that basically was not aligned to either party, and they were the providers of the the intelligence that's required for the next 20 years for the power in this country, for example. Because if we had the right power solutions that wasn't politicized, we could generate cheap enough power that could then create the manufacturing. I think Australians are well educated, very innovative, and I think we're held back by a short-sighted sort of political system.
It's difficult to think long-term when you've got 3-year political cycles, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look elsewhere in the world, despite the concerns, ethical and otherwise, of places like China, they think in generational terms and they plan in generational terms.
Yes.
Governments in Australia tend to do their work for 18 months or so and then they're back in campaigning mode to try and win the next election.
Correct.
And therein lies a big part of the problem, I think, and that discourages apolitical, collaboration to solve some of our fundamental problems as an economy.
100% agree, and that's why I think we need some sort of institutions that are somewhat apolitical and that are thinking in the 20-year horizon and helping governments form those 20-year horizons. So, without a doubt.
Yeah. Let's look at some of our rapid-fire questions, Tommy. If you could invite a much-admired leader, living or deceased, to your home for dinner, who would it be, and what would be the most important question you'd ask them?
Well, in my case, being a South African, I think it would be Nelson Mandela. I've always wondered what it would be like to sit with him and talk to him and hear, someone who faced such hardship and was so forgiving at the end of it. What I would ask him is why did he only stay for 3 years as president? Because while he was an older man and he looked like he had enough energy and I think if he had stayed another 3 years, I think he could have just set South Africa on such a irreversible positive path. I mean, it would have been fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a one-off, absolutely. So many people say Nelson Mandela in response to that question.
Yeah.
There's something very Christian about him, as you mentioned, not having the vindictive recrimination and revenge on his political opponents.
I mean, we certainly, as I say, at that time there was a fear that could have happened over the transitional period, and he shepherded that extremely well. Yeah.
You've been around a lot of very talented executives and directors. Who's the smartest person you've ever met?
Smartest person. I mean, there's so many very smart people, but actually, it's probably someone that worked for me. So not someone that I worked for example. A guy. His name is Matt Briggs. So he runs small. He's run a few small junior explorers. Very clever guy. He's just got such an ability to think through things so logically and communicate them so clearly.
A geologist.
He's a geologist by training, but he's moved into sort of a bigger sort of realm right now. But yeah, I've always admired his thought process. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this one. Belief or ability, which comes first?
Well, I think belief comes before ability. As you say, you can fake it a bit, but I think you've got to believe that where you're going and believe in your mission, and you'll learn what you need to learn to get there.
You mentioned earlier that you're a reader of fiction and non-fiction. What's a non-fiction book that you found particularly useful in terms of helping you progress in your career?
Well, that's a hard question because you read so many books. One that I go back to a lot is an interesting. It's Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, and I find that I always found that so fascinating because he was the emperor of Rome in those days, and an emperor was essentially God. I mean he or she would have run with the biggest iron fist, and he was such an empathetic person and someone that really was so self-aware and that spent time writing down his personal thoughts while he was on a military campaign. I always found that to be so fascinating that someone like that.
I've heard of it. What period of time did he live?
So early AD, so just after Christ, the other way, AD.
Before Christ?
No, after Christ. So AD,
AD,
okay. So early AD, Yeah, and one thing that one of the he's got hundreds of things in there, but the one that sort of has helped me and sort of links back to something I said earlier about what I've learned in myself. Choose not to be harmed is one of his sayings, and what he means in that, I think, is when someone's saying something a little bit nasty to you, you can choose to be harmed, and then you will be hurt because it's your perception of that. What they're saying is that hurts you.
Yeah.
If you choose not to be harmed, whatever they're saying can't hurt you.
Yes.
And then you can respond in a more sort of even and sort of considered way.
That's so true. But sadly, so many people don't have the maturity and self-control to be able to remain calm and choose not to be offended or hurt. But
well, it's something that, as I say, I go back to that book quite a lot because he's got some fantastic. I don't know where someone like that, how much time he had to be able to do that. Yeah.
When you finally come off all those boards you're on and you decide to write your own book, what would be the subject matter of it?
Well, it would either be nature, something to do with nature, and how the interconnectedness of nature, from geology all the way to sort of the predator, or I've always half interested, just for my children's sake, to tell them where I've been, basically, because I've had the most fantastic, times of traveling through, as I said, through outback Russia, when just after the Iron Curtain had fallen. So it was, coming from South Africa, I sort of thought that this was going to be a superpower, and rural Russia was very similar to rural South Africa, and that was something that was very interesting to me. So I've had lots of really interesting times. So if I could remember them all, I would write them down.
Well, best to write them down now. I look forward to reading that memoir. Yeah. What's the best business or career advice you've been given?
It was probably from my boss at Goldfields before I became in his position. Once there was I'd negotiated a joint venture here in Australia with a company, and it had been a lot, and we'd all been in good faith. The company changed certain things, and we couldn't go ahead with the joint venture any longer. And I phoned him, and he was in the US, and I was here, and I said, what must I say to them? So he said, tell them the truth. That's what you'll remember. and that's helped me a lot because, I think as companies, you always try to put a spin on things, and you try to do that. And I've always sort of thought back, no, tell the truth, because I'll remember that. And it's as simple as that,
Yeah, great advice. What are you most optimistic about?
Well, I am most optimistic about the Australian mining industry. I think we innovate. I think we will work out a way to use AI appropriately and properly. I think we will meet this world's energy demands because all the metals that are required for the energy change, I think we'll do it. So I'm optimistic about our ability to do that.
What should you start doing?
What should I start doing?
That you're not currently doing?
Oh, maybe I should start swimming.
In addition to your Pilates?
Yeah, in addition to Pilates, yeah. I don't know. I don't think I've got time to do too much else. And really, I love, as I say, wildlife and photography. So that's probably what I would do
Spend
more
time
of.
in the field,
Yeah, I'd do more of
snapshotting.
that. Yeah.
What do you think you should stop doing?
Well, this is an interesting one, because I believe half of the success I've had in my limited career is I've always said yes. I've always embraced, when someone gives me a challenge, I say yes, and I'd fake it till it happened, etc. But I think now I should start saying no.
No more board director
no more board,
roles.
or something like that. Yeah.
What energizes you above everything else?
Interacting with people that I like. Yeah.
And what drains you of energy?
Bureaucracy. I don't like it. So that's why I enjoy working in growth-oriented companies, because they tend to have limited bureaucracy.
Yeah. Final question. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self to help you lead a better quality life?
Well, it's probably the usual one, spend more time with your family, because while I said yes to everything in my career, I ran around, but I think I missed quite a lot of important times with the family. So I would try and be a little bit more considered about that going forward. Yeah.
Tommy, thanks very much for your time today. You've been very. I've enjoyed the conversation. I think you've got such a varied life, your experiences in all sorts of countries, and you've shared a lot of wisdom, I think, today. So thank you for being our guest.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
See you next time.
Cheerio.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.